70% of deaths in Jamaica are due to chronic non-communicable diseases. And more than half of Jamaicans are categorized as either obese or pre-obese. I'm Kediesha Watkis, and this is the Wellness Beat. Today we're talking about the dietary practices of Jamaicans. And here to unpack this subject with me is Ms. Deonne Caines, Program Development Officer in the Nutrition Unit of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Hi Deonne.
Hi Kediesha.
So happy to have you with us. Talk to us about our nutritional habits as Jamaicans. We heard the statistics at the beginning. How big is this problem of nutritional habits across Jamaica?
All right, so first of all, why are nutritional habits important? So the things that we eat and how we eat them consistently can actually impact our health. So we talk a lot about non-communicable diseases like diabetes or high blood pressure. And in many instances, apart from when it's just genetics, it's because of our lifestyle. So if we consistently eat foods with too much sugar or drinks with too much sugar, or fruit and vegetable intake is too low, we don't get enough fiber and so on, or we consume foods with too much salt or fat, those things can impact our health. So it increases our likelihood of becoming overweight or obese.
Right.
And then that in turn increases the likelihood of developing whether it's the diabetes or the high blood pressure or heart disease. So that's the first thing, we have to understand why it's important.
Okay.
So the Jamaica Health and Lifestyle Survey was last done in 2017.
Yes.
And they surveyed Jamaicans 15 years of age and older, I think up to about 75. And what we found was that about 8% of Jamaicans had fast food every day, at least one time. And then nearly 30% had a sweet drink at least one time for the day. Right. Fruit and vegetable intake was also very low. Less than 30% of persons were eating adequate fruits and vegetables. Additionally, they asked about salt. So we found that about 1 in every 10 persons added extra salt to their food at the table. So this is not when they're cooking it. It's already cooked. It gets to the table.
And we're adding salt.
And we're adding salt. Right. So what we're finding now is that we're not just having a habit of having too much salt, fat, and sugar, but our taste is also changing. So if we were to have a food that had a healthy amount of salt, we might think it's too fresh. It needs more salt.
Oh, wow.
Or we drink something or we eat something and it's not excessively sweet, we might think it needs more sugar. Because what we've done now, we've conditioned our taste buds to want more salt, to want more sugar. And to be honest, these foods actually can make you feel a little happier, especially these high-fat foods. There's a reason they call it comfort foods.
Right.
It actually does play on your brain, those chemicals that make you feel good. And so you'll hear people speaking about food addiction.
Yes.
Right. So consistently doing these things can actually put us in a state where we, one, don't notice that we're over-consuming.
Because we're happy.
Right. And two, we just start to crave them. So we really have to do something now. As you said, almost half of Jamaicans are overweight or obese. We have to do something now. We're seeing it in our children. If we don't do something now, we're going to end up with a country of just sick people.
Right.
And yeah, so we really have to just do something now.
Because of course this is having a burden on the public health system.
Yes.
We will find that people will need more medical attention because of these diseases. Wow. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about the link between non-communicable diseases and an unhealthy diet?
Well, I would say, as we spoke about, it's habit. So we want to start early. Instill it in children. Children are a captive audience. And because these are lifestyle diseases, it takes a while for them to develop. What we don't want is for early sickness, and we also want that eventually we'll have a healthier adult population.
Right.
So start early, start with the children, start trying to instill healthy eating habits, support any programs that are for children for healthy eating. So for example, in a while we'll have the National School Nutrition Policy.
Yes.
Support that policy. because it's going to make sure that healthy foods are available in schools. So don't fight out the policy.
Right.
You know, we're trying to build a healthier country. We have the guidelines for beverages.
Yes.
Look at what you're eating, look at what you're feeding the children. Take interest in yourself and your children's health.
And of course, that will position us to have a healthier population.
Yes.
Indeed. You know, a common thought that exists in the public space is that it is expensive to eat healthily. What are your thoughts about that? What are some of the insights that you have? Because many Jamaicans will say eating healthy is expensive.
Yes. All right. So when I'm asked this question, I like to find out, what do you mean? If you look in your cupboard and you have, say, a bag of lentils and you have a bag of rice, some people will say they don't have anything to cook. They don't have anything to eat.
Right.
Not realizing that a well-seasoned pot of rice and lentils, you put enough lentils in there, that's
already a meal.
A meal. It is a complete meal, right? And then for bonus, you would add some vegetables if you have it. So what are we really looking at as healthy? Are we talking about buying the ingredients, the healthy ingredients, and preparing them that cost more? Or are we talking about already prepared meals? Because if we look, for example, if we were to go to a restaurant and we would want something that's healthier, let's think about regular lunch, a cook shop. You might get some fried chicken, some rice and peas, and then they'll ask you if you want veg or pasta.
Plus the gravy.
Plus the gravy, right. So if you said to the man at the cook shop, okay, give me less rice and give me more veg, it's gonna cost you extra. He'll probably ask you to pay extra for the veg. But then we're buying prepared meals. And for the man who's selling it, he can store rice for a long, long, long time. He can't buy lettuce in bulk and put it down.
Okay.
So for him, his costs are more that way. So sometimes what I advise people, prepare your vegetables at home.
Okay.
Prepare your veg at home, take it with you, and put it with whatever meal you've purchased. So if we think about actually just using the ingredients
that we already have,
it could cost you less because you're not paying the markup. And then using fresh foods, they're naturally healthier because they don't have all the extra trans fat added, the extra salt added, and so on. We get to control what goes in it. And then, as you said, using what we have, a lot of people like to fight out callaloo. But the truth is, callaloo is a very nutritious food. It's high in iron, and it's a good source of calcium. It's a dark leafy vegetable, and it grows fast.
Yes.
You need a few little seeds in a little pot or something around the side of the house, and you'll have a lot of callaloo. It grows quickly. It's not something you have to put a lot of cash into to get it, and you can supplement your meals that way.
Right.
So sometimes we think that we have to have, say, like we need kale and baby spinach and those kinds of things.
Some of the things we see on TV.
The things we see on TV. You have to make a smoothie every morning. That's not what defines healthfulness.
Yeah.
The healthfulness of our meals, we have our food-based dietary guidelines. So we have our 6 food groups. We eat from the 6 food groups. We ensure that our meals have some vegetables. We eat at least maybe 2 cups a day of raw veg or a cup of cooked veg. We have our fruits. We eat fruits every day. We prepare our meats. If we eat meat in a lean way, don't put too much salt in there. Use your natural spices and seasonings. Those are the things that makes the food healthy, the things that we don't put in it. Right. Food becomes unhealthy because we put too much salt, put too much sugar, put too much oil.
Right.
So if you have a cost problem or a budget problem, look at what you have, look at what you're consuming. Because sometimes you go to some of these fast food restaurants where a meal is like $1,000 and it's full of people who you thought probably didn't have the money, but they'll spend the money on it.
I like how you think about that, Deonne. And so I hear you saying, use what we already have. And I also hear you saying, let's be versatile and creative with what we have. And so we can definitely sustain ourselves and still be healthy.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, to be honest though, there are some people who might not be able to afford a healthy diet. We do have people in Jamaica below the poverty line who really are not able to afford, and we would have different social programs to help. But other persons, I believe, we can institute little things to assist in eating healthier.
Got that. And you mentioned Jamaicans adding salt at the table, this idea of more salt, put little sugar in the drinks, that kind. Add more butter to the rice. Yes. So we're consuming more salts, more sugars, more fats, and it's doing a lot of damage. What steps can we take to reduce our intake of these added sugars, salts, and fats?
All right, so where they come from? On the one hand, we have the salts, the sugars, and the fats that we put in when we cook. On the other hand, we have salts, sugars, and fats in prepackaged foods. These mean things that we buy off the shelf, ready to eat foods, or foods that you don't have to do much to. For example, you just add hot water. These foods are mass produced. They can sit on the shelf for a long time.
Yeah.
And mostly the reason is because they're high in salt, so the microbial growth will be low, or they're high in sugar, so the microbial growth will be low, or they might be just high in fat. So one thing we can do is to cut down on how much of these pre-packaged, ready-to-eat foods that we consume. If you swap them out for something you prepare yourself,
a home-cooked
meal, you don't use as much salt, sugar, and fat as they do in that manufacturing process. It's difficult. We're all under different time constraints. The traffic are one thing. You wake up early, you have to beat the traffic. You get to work, you get home late.
Yeah.
And it might be a little difficult to do that home cooking. But what I would urge persons to do is to think about the long term. We really need to invest in ourselves.
Yes.
We need to invest in our health. And if it means that Saturday evening or Sunday evening, we prep something, put some in the freezer. If it's not even every day, you can do it. Maybe you can prep food 2 out of the 7 days or 3 out of the 7 days of the week. It's worth a start.
Yeah.
So you'll actually be able to cut down on your intake of salt, sugars, and fat this way. Another way is to look at the labels, because some of them are sneaky. So you eat some food, it don't even taste sweet. But if you look, it has so much sugar, because in addition to the sugar that is in there, they put other things to enhance the flavor profile. So they might put something that's a little tart or tangy to balance the sweet taste. So when you drink it, you don't taste all that sugar, or you don't taste all that salt. And so we really need to be mindful of what's on the label. It might be a little time consuming at first if you don't understand it.
Yeah.
But we do have programs helping people to read the nutrition facts panel. We have a jingle. So if you've heard the jingle,
zoom in on the nutrition facts, right?
Right. So it tells you for sodium, sugar, and fat, 5% or less, you're on the right track. So look for sodium, sugar, fat, and then you look across to the right. If you see 5% or something less than 5%, you're on the right track.
Right.
If it's more than that, then it's high in the sodium, the sugar, or the fat. And what you want to do is you don't want to eat those foods all the time. Yeah, man, a few times you can eat it. It's fine. You feel for it today, you buy it today. But don't make it habitual. So don't make these foods a long-term part of your diet. And especially for the children, when we're packing the lunch boxes, we need to look at these things. Look at what you're putting in the lunchbox.
Yeah.
Just imagine that if you put in a regular size soda, you're putting in like 6 tablespoons of sugar. Wow. Now, would you have gone in your cupboard and just pour 6 tablespoons of sugar in the lunch kit and say, eat this for lunch? You wouldn't, because it's too much sugar. But in the drink itself, you don't notice. So we need to look at the labels, figure out what we're consuming. If you have the time and the energy, just do it for even half the day. Write it down, add it up at the end of the day. You'll see just how much hidden salt, hidden sugar, hidden fat is in the foods.
So I hear you talking, Deonne, about the nutrition facts panels, and the food labels. At the same time, the Jamaica Health and Lifestyle Survey tells us that Jamaicans are not paying attention to the nutrition facts panels. Yes. They're not reading the labels. They do not pay attention to the nutritional claims. They're just not taking the time to consider what they are digesting. And so clearly, it's having an impact on our dietary habits.
Yeah, so maybe it's another time thing. Being able to, you're in the supermarket, you want to get home, you're not going to spend 10 minutes over every item looking at the label. But again, I would like to urge people to invest in yourself. You have to invest in ourselves. If you do this exercise, maybe 2 of your shopping trips, it becomes so much easier. You probably won't have to do it after that much because you'll know what you're going to buy.
Right.
Just invest in yourself. It takes time, but it's important. So the labels are usually on the side or the back.
Right.
Sometimes they're a little tiny, they're kind of big. What we found was that persons who had higher education levels were more likely to understand. And so that's why at the Ministry of Health and Wellness, we're really trying to get the message out there to kind of simplify how to read the Nutrition Facts panel. So when you hear the jingle playing on the radio, listen to the jingle. It's going to help you. If you see it on TV, watch it. It's going to help you. It's going to help you.
To check the nutrition facts.
Yes. Right. And then also, the Caribbean on a whole is working on front of package labeling. So what front of package labeling would do is to kind of interpret what's on the nutrition facts panel, present it on the front, but in a nice, easy and simple way.
Okay.
Right. So for example, you might see, I think there's a specific brand, it's a Spanish brand, and you might see some black octagons on it and it says high in something. So it might say high in salt. You wouldn't have to have gone to the nutrition facts panel to look at the number, see if it's more than 5% or whatever, to see if it's high in salt. It would have been nicely presented there on the front. So if you know you're a person and the doctor told you need to watch your salt intake, from you see that little thing that said high in salt, you would know this is not a regular food. Right.
Yes.
Right. So just support these efforts as well.
Right.
We need the public to ask about labeling, ask why the food them not label. If you go somewhere and you ask them what is in there, you have anything that don't have so much salt, some people go and get vexed and ask if you want the food or you don't want the food. But it's your body and it's your health. It's your body.
I'm glad you say that, Deonne, because it's about habit building. Because we can, in fact, when we go to be served, ask for the food to be prepared without a certain ingredient, if possible, less salt, that kind of a thing.
Right.
And so it's about habit building. Earlier you mentioned the food-based dietary guidelines. How important is this for us? I know that we have the servings and you are able to just share a little bit about that. But given the link between unhealthy diets and non-communicable diseases, what is the role of the food-based dietary guidelines in terms of helping us have that proper nutrition?
All right, so it's literally what it says. It's a guideline for the diet based on food. So there are different types of guidelines. For example, we might say that your sodium intake should not exceed more than 2,000 milligrams per day. Practically, what does that look like?
That is a lot, yeah.
How do I do that? Right. So the food-based dietary guidelines were developed specifically. We have our Jamaican food-based dietary guidelines. So we looked at our population, what were our persisting issues, what do we need to be healthy. And so we have a picture that has the 6 Caribbean food groups. So you want me to explain what they are? Say what they are?
Yes, please,
okay.
please.
So the 6 Caribbean food groups, we have staples.
Yes.
Staples are include the ground provision, the rice.
That gives us our carbohydrates.
The major constituent, yes. Okay. So carbohydrates. green banana, those kinds of things. Staples.
Well, is that also what we would say in Jamaica is starch?
Starch. Right, the starchy food.
Yeah.
Yes. And then you will have foods from animals. Literally, that's what it is. Somewhere you eat came from an animal. So it's meat, fish, poultry, things like dairy or yogurt, those kinds of things are from animals. So food from animals.
Right.
Peas, beans, and nuts. Legumes. Peas, beans, and nuts. Literally the peas, the beans, the nuts. Those are in that group. So we're gone 3.
Right.
Then we have fruits.
Okay.
And everybody know what it is.
And we have a lot of fruits in Jamaica. Fruit trees all over.
Galore.
So that one needs no explaining.
Right. Then we have vegetables. That's number
Right.
5. And the 6th one is fats and oils.
Okay.
So we have them set out nicely in a little circle. Some people call it a plate. And it has the divisions to show you the proportions for the day, what it should look like. And then there are examples because it's a picture. So you can look at the picture and see examples of each food group. Then we have 8 tips that go with these. So basically these 8 tips are general tips for persons 2 years and older to maintain good health. So you might say, well, I have X condition and I have special dietary needs. Right. So this applies to the general population. The food-based dietary guidelines apply to the general population. Right. So basically now let's go back to that sodium intake, less than 2,000 milligrams per day. If you were to institute that practically, you might not be sure what to do. But the food-based dietary guidelines, one of the tips tells us reduce intake of salty and processed foods.
Okay.
Is that a little bit more easy to understand?
Well, once you say reduce your intake of salty foods, then we know that we're going to be a little bit more conscious of some of the salty items that we have in our diet, and definitely to desist from that adding salt to the food at the table. So
it's more easy. It's easier to institute, to practice.
Definitely.
Right. So if you consistently reduce your intake of salty, you know the salty foods because you just know what salt tastes like. The processed foods, the ones in the package, pre-processed, ready to eat.
Yes.
Reduce the intake of those. You will find that naturally, just because you did that, you would have drastically decreased your salt intake.
Right.
So that's what the food-based dietary guidelines do. They interpret those, we like to say highfalutin. We interpret those highfalutin guidelines that people don't really understand into basic food. So eat a variety of fruits each day.
And so Deonne, as we're wrapping up, we've talked about so much. The link between proper nutrition and the non-communicable diseases. And of course, when we say non-communicable diseases, we're talking about like the hypertension, the stroke, the cancers, and so on. And you brought us an explanation of the food-based dietary guidelines and the nutrition facts panels. What would be the final message to Jamaicans on this topic of nutrition and certainly the food labels?
Okay, I think I'm going to leave you with the same message that we need to invest in ourselves. We can either spend the time, and maybe you need to get some education. You might spend a little extra money here or there. Spend the time to learn, heed the messages, put the things into practice. If you don't do that now, you're going to be spending the money later on medication. Days missed from work, your boss don't pay for that day because you missed too many days. Sick family members, the household might lose income because someone has either died or become disabled. So we need to put first things first. And if you don't have your health, what can you do?
So thank you so much, Deonne, for being with us. It's all the time that we have today on the Wellness Beat. My guest has been Deonne Caines, Program Development Officer in the Nutrition Unit at the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We're so thankful that you were able to join us for this episode.